Hello everyone, Dan McGann here. Today, I want to talk about Ashes of Creation and try and bring everyone back to reality here because there are some ridiculous takes out there at the moment when it comes to a potential release date, how complete the game is going to be, the class system, the reopening of the Alpha 2 keys. There's so much going on and I can't make a long enough video to cover them all, so I'm just going to focus on a couple of things over the last few weeks since Intrepid's last update. And this is where I want to start, the announcement of Alpha 2 keys coming back. Now, I've been trying to figure out why anyone is shocked or upset about this. We all know they said the pre-order packs were going to be stopping, and they did. They stopped the pre-order packs in January this past year. In the recent update about server meshing, they announced the Alpha 2 keys would at some point become available again for purchase, but have a listen to what Margaret has to say during that update.
Very thorough explanation of the things that we're working on technology-wise. But with that comes some information that we want to share with you guys. Of course, we always like to be transparent. We like to give you guys a heads up on what's coming and what we're doing. And one of the things is that with this technology, we had stated previously that we weren't going to expand. We closed down our Alpha 2 packs for a reason, and that reason was we wanted to make sure that we could service all the users that we had. One of the things that we really want to make sure of is that no matter who we have joining us, that they're going to have a good experience. Obviously, alphas and alpha, things are going to be buggy. This is not a game. We've always continually said that it's going to be a testing phase. But with that, we still want it to be a decent experience for those of you who join us. And because of this amazing technology that these guys have been working on, we can now service more users, which means that we will be opening up Alpha 2 key access sales in the near future as we get closer to Alpha 2 or along with Alpha 2. So kind of stay tuned for that. We do want to make sure that folks are aware of that, but some caveats. These will not be pre-order packs. These will be key access. So these will be, to access the product once it's available. And then of course the pricing is still TBD, but we're going to try to make sure it's fair as possible.
Now, with everything that Margaret just said about the keys there, Steven obviously touches on that a little bit, but he doesn't really say anything that is different from what Margaret stated during that clip that I just showed. Now, I understand the argument. I understand people are pissed off about, the $250 and $375 packs. I personally, myself, am somebody that bought a $250 pack, but I did that shortly after the WeatherTech update because that was enough for me to want to play test the game. I also purchased the pack knowing what I was purchasing, access to Alpha 2, Beta 1, and Beta 2, and that was it. Everything that was added on after that, the extra gameplay time, the cosmetics, which I could give two shits less about because it doesn't do anything for you in the game aside from a visual representation, which you can't even transmog it to take one piece. Like, that's not the way it's going to work with these cosmetics, at least as of right now. Before we dive into the pre-order packs, would it be smart for them to wait after Alpha 2 launches to make sure that the servers are working? Yes, because I don't think anybody should have any misconception or think that, with the server tech, as they just said in this clip, that it's going to be fully functioning and working. I think that was not the smartest thing to announce. Obviously, that's what you were going to do. Should they wait either a couple of days after Alpha 2 launches? Probably. As far as the pricing goes, or the people saying that they are shocked that they would do it this soon, I don't really understand the upset. And don't think for a second in any way, shape, or form that I am defending Intrepid or I'm criticizing them. I'm looking at this as somebody that is strictly looking at the business side of what they're doing, because I think a lot of people seem to forget that Intrepid Studios is a business. Just because they're making a video game that you're invested in or that you really want to be good, I feel a lot of people forget at the end of the day, it's a business and its goal, like any business, is to make money. And the issue with that is we, the player base, the community, have actually allowed this to happen. And don't get me wrong, I'm not pointing fingers, throwing blame, or just throwing shit at the wall and hoping and see whatever sticks. No, this is a true fact. I pre-ordered a pack along with thousands of other people that pre-ordered a pack. You have all the people that backed the Kickstarter and pledged money to the Kickstarter campaign. Those people are also at fault. And the reason that we, the community, the players that pre-ordered these packs or pledged to the Kickstarter, we showed Intrepid that they can make millions of dollars by not even having an actual playable product. Yeah, we're a problem. Now, there's a couple other things I want to address with the keys. One, the FOMO aspect of this. I understand the FOMO term. I understand why it was used. I get it. And I partially agree. Now, the one thing I don't agree with is the fact that FOMO to me is something where something's on a time limit. Now, obviously, Intrepid put this on a time limit by saying pre-order packs are going away. This is your last chance to buy it, and that's it. They did say during that time, though, that they would consider in the future bringing the keys back. They've obviously considered it. They're bringing the keys back. Nothing we can do about it. It's their choice. It's their business. We're going to get more into that here in a moment as well. But my pushback on the FOMO idea is this. The pre-order packs have been were available for years. So the idea that people felt pressured, and you even have Steven and Margaret on across multiple live streams for months, if not years, telling people you do not need to pre-order this. I'm sorry, I don't see the FOMO aspect of it. I agree partially, like I said, but I don't agree with the pressure part, right? Unless I hear somebody from Intrepid showed up at your door and threatened you that if you didn't pre-order Ashes of Creation, you'd never play, or they would hurt you. That to me is, well, that's more of a threat, but guess what? It's pressure. All right. I don't believe it at all. People claiming that they were pressured, whatever. Now, I want to get into the price point of this. A lot of people have been speculating what they feel is a fair price and what isn't. Honestly, I don't give a shit. That's just as blunt and as plain as I can put it. I don't care. Again, as I just said, we knew there was a possibility these keys were going to come back. And they specifically said key sales, not pre-order packs. You have to listen to what they're saying. I don't know why people are upset about this. And again, I brought us up as a community and people who have pre-ordered back to Kickstarter campaign. The opportunity on the table for a business to make millions of more dollars is there. Who the fuck wouldn't jump at that? I'm not defending them. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just strictly looking at that from a business standpoint and a financial decision. Like, think of it like this. If you were a business owner and you knew you had a product that people really, really wanted, you took it away for a little bit, there was high demand, and you brought it back, and you knew that there was a possibility that it could, because of the supply and demand, and you knew there was a chance to make even more money than from before, especially at a reduced price. Any person who is running a business would jump on that opportunity in a heartbeat, because that's the whole point of running a business. It gets lost in game development, yet you see it all the time. And the last thing I want to touch on is this, and this is going to be interesting, and you see this all the time, not just with MMORPGs, but you see it in the gaming industry across multiple genres. I'm going to paint a scenario here. So let's say we just got the server meshing update, just like we did, but the announcement didn't quite go the way that we heard. Let's just say, for instance, Steven and Margaret announced the keys were never coming back. What do we think the court of public opinion would be on that? I think we all know. People would be freaking out, those who have keys, and those who don't will be upset, pissed off, criticizing Intrepid just like they're doing now. To me, this is just a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, and I think Intrepid knows that. I think Steven knows that. And to be honest, people think the fucking game's a scam anyway, so it's just like, well, I mean, why would I want to let you guys down? I might as well make a couple extra $1 million. Like, fuck. Go for it. Doesn't affect me any. I pre-ordered my stuff and I'm happy with what I pre-ordered. And I understand, again, I mentioned it just a little earlier before I got on the cam here and started talking about this. I understand the aspect that people are upset about the $250 or $375 packs. I've seen people saying, well, we should have the option to refund and just get the key. I mean, if that's something Steven wants to do, if that's something that Intrepid does down the line, right? I don't have an issue with that. I don't really understand why you would want to, considering that when the game launches, you're getting your money back. And if the game doesn't launch, there was a verbal agreement when you pre-ordered these packs that you will get your money back. So either way, you're getting your money's worth with the pre-order. And if something happens where they don't launch Ashes of Creation, you're going to get your money back. And if they say no, that's when everybody who gave their money to Intrepid starts a legal battle. It's that simple. And that's where I'm going to end this little rant. I know it was a little longer. I know obviously me being on the cam, just talking off the top of my head. Obviously I edited this together, took some pauses, thought about what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. I just feel that it's a ridiculous situation to be upset about at the moment. There's a lot more things that people should be worried about. And this is the last thing I'm going to bring up. I know I said the scenario was going to be, but I've had just a moment to think about this. Here's my biggest concern, and this has been my biggest concern since pre-order packs, and the Kickstarter. And that concern is bad actors getting in. So, and what I mean by that is, let's say Alpha 2 goes off without a hitch. Or let's say it's in an even better state than what New World launched it. That's, to me, that should be the goal, right? Because let's face facts, New World fucking sucked. It sucked so bad. But if it launches in that state, do we not think, especially at a reduced price, and with the way that Ashes of Creation has been treated over the last 7 years of its development, or what? Or has it been 8? I don't fucking know anymore. Do we really think that people wouldn't just buy a key to get in, record their content, and constantly shit on the game? And let's face facts, it already happens now. We all see that it happens now. Happens to content creators, happens in the Discord, Reddit, the forums. There's enough bad press around this game. And the one thing I'm worried about is bad actors. And I'm more worried about the fact of, like, let's say Alpha 2 is in a decent place. It's just going to get shit on despite the fact that it's actually in a good spot for Alpha development. That should be, in my mind, everybody's real concern. And I know that might be me being a bit of a pessimist and thinking the worst of people, but if anything, the last 20 years of playing video games, I've seen it all. So... I've seen it all. I know many of you have seen it all. Gamers are toxic. We're assholes. We all know we are. We all have our moments, especially when it comes to a game and the opinions on a game. That's my biggest concern. And for the last subject of this video, I want to focus on when Ashes of Creation will actually launch. And I'll be honest, I've actually enjoyed reading and watching videos of people's takes on this, and there have been some really good points. But I'm going to be basing this on what we've seen the past 3 years since the Unreal Engine 5 update announcement, because let's be honest, the decision to migrate over everything from Unreal Engine 4 has had an impact on the development process of Ashes of Creation, but it's been during this time that we can really see how much progress has actually been made. And where I'm going to start with this is archetypes. This is going to be the best example. I've done a bunch of math that might be a little boring to people, but bear with me. Now, obviously, during the Alpha 1, players had access to very basic versions of 3 archetypes, which were the Tank, Cleric, and Mage. After the UE5 announcement, however, we have been shown Cleric, Tank, and Mage. The Mage more than any of them multiple times over the last 3 years, with updates showing off the improvements since Alpha 1 and what we can expect for Alpha 2. And in December 2023, we've seen the Ranger archetype for the first time, and then this past year, back in March, the Fighter archetype for the first time. And what I want to do here is look at the timeline of when we were shown updates for all 5 archetypes that we have seen, and then talk about the Bard, Rogue, and Summoner at the end. So starting with the Cleric, available during the Alpha 1, and after the Unreal 5 update was shown to us December 2nd, 2022 during the Constellation update. Then we got an update that really showed off the Cleric and was primarily focused on this archetype July 28th, 2023. So the time of development since Unreal Engine 5 to the playable Alpha 2 version of the Cleric was 1 year, 7 months, and 5 days, or a total of 582 days. And now on to the Mage. And to be honest, out of the 5 archetypes, this one has honestly been the hardest to kind of lock down timeline-wise because we've seen it so much over the past 3 years. But the first time we've seen the Mage update in UE5 was April 28th, 2023. Then again, during the World Boss 2 mock update, which took place May 31st, 2023, the Alpha 2 event update on September 29th, 2023, the Commissions update on February 29th, 2024, obviously the Midnight Magic update on April 30th, 2024, and very recently in the Node Wars update on May 31st, 2024. So timeline-wise, I'm going to be doing the math based off when UE5 was announced, which was December 31st, 2021, and when we first seen the Mage on April 28th, 2023, which was 1 year, 4 months, and 5 days, or a total of 491 days. Now, Tank is another hard one, and here is why. We got our first look at the Tank on January 27th, 2023, and then we see the Tank played again during the Tower of Carfin update on March 31st, 2023. Now, we do see Steven playing the Tank during the Node Village update, August 31st, 2023, and I'm focusing mainly on the Node Village update because the number of abilities that were present during this update matches what we see from the Cleric and Mage updates compared to the actual Tank archetype update from those 2 previous streams. Now, unfortunately, we haven't actually had a good update where Steven is playing and showcasing the tank with this updated ability tree. I don't know why we haven't seen that. It's actually been kind of disappointing. The total time from UE5 to the No Village update for tank was 1 year, 8 months, and 8 days, or 616 days in total. And now on to fighter. Now, during the melee weapon demonstration back in 2022, we got to look at what the two-handed sword animations and the dual-wield daggers looked like in Unreal Engine 5. But during this update, Intrepid showed a couple of fighter abilities that have clearly had an upgrade since then. We got our first look and extremely brief base version of this archetype during this update on June 30th, 2022. And then we seen what we can expect to be playing from this archetype for Alpha 2 on March 29th, 2024. But it took Intrepid a total of 1 year, 8 months, and 28 days for a total of 638 days to show us the fighter archetype since they teased it back in the melee weapon presentation video in 2022. Next up, the Ranger. During the ranged weapon basic attack update on September 30th, 2022, we basically seen the same thing, the basic weapon attack animations and a couple of abilities from the Ranger archetype. Then the reveal of the Ranger back on December 19th, 2023 for Alpha 2. Now the timeline here is much shorter but still a lot, 1 year, 2 months, and 19 days, or a total of 445 days. So, why am I giving you all a bunch of fucking math? Well, we know the update that's coming in a little over a week now. Actually, it's about a week, give or take, once I get this video up. And it's hard to predict the timeline for the Bard based on the fact that we've never actually seen it before. So this is going to be an assumption that the timeline should be around the same as the Ranger and the Fighter. And the common number between these two is around 1.5 years, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. But let's say it's taking 18 months for Intrepid to get an archetype ready for Alpha 2. And yes, I'm saying Alpha 2 because right now that is Intrepid's goal. Getting a base version of these archetypes into Alpha 2 and getting the data and feedback from the community. And I have a couple of speculations about the Bard and why it's taken so long to see. First, this class really is a hybrid in almost every MMORPG or single-player RPG. This class has access to heals, party buffs, big DPS numbers, close quarter combat, and range combat. Second, I think Baldur's Gate 3, and after it officially launched last August, made Intrepid look at the class again, or they made a pivot. And lastly, the UE5 update opened up possibilities or a direction that wasn't achievable before in Unreal Engine 4. Again, speculation on my part, but Intrepid has made a habit of talking about Baldur's Gate 3 on past live streams, so there may actually be something there. But we're still 2 archetypes short, the Rogue and the Summoner. Now we know the Rogue will be added after Alpha 2 launches and should be added in the first update when it comes to adding new features and content for Alpha 2. This was confirmed by Steven during the AMA livestream in May of this year. I'm surprised that the Bard is ready for the launch of Alpha 2 before the Rogue. If you really look at the 5 archetypes we have, don't look to have major differences from other MMORPGs. And honestly, between the Rogue and the Bard, I personally think the Bard is a more difficult class to build because of that true hybrid nature, where a Rogue relies on stealth but big DPS bursts, damage over time, and CC. So this really has left me trying to wrap my head around how different the Rogue is going to be in Ashes of Creation compared to other MMORPGs, because this is the only reason I can see for it not being available before the Bard. Now for our last archetype, the Summoner. And it's a tricky one. We've known Summoner would not be available at the start of Alpha 2 for quite some time. Steven did an interview back on the podcast Theory Forge back in July of 2023 confirming it. But what is interesting and hopeful is this year in 2024 during the commissions update, we got to look at what summons could look like for Ashes of Creation. Now I already showed this clip earlier in the video, I'm not going to put it back up, but many think this was a sign that the development of the Summoner archetype was underway, which I'm assuming it is. Now for argument's sake, let's say when everyone reacted to this update, that development on the Summoner was progressing, or has been underway for a few months. This would mean if we take the average time that it has taken Intrepid to get an archetype ready just for Alpha 2 after the Unreal Engine 5 update, we are honestly possibly going to be waiting another year before Summoner is even available. But I want to be clear, I don't know how far along Summoner is, but I think it's safe to say sometime in 2025 we could expect to have it in Alpha 2. Now, with all the archetype stuff out of the way, I think the average base time right now, given the numbers and crunching the math, about 1 year, 6 months, maybe 8 months. I think that's valid, especially given the fact of the 3 archetypes we haven't seen, even though we get Bard in about a week, give or take. Talking about the development time in Unreal Engine 5, that's something we really need to point out. But also, these classes are not complete. We're getting base versions or a version of the class for Alpha 2. Going to be balancing that needs to happen. Still haven't even seen the class system. We don't even know if the class system where you make your first choice of your archetype, your base archetype, choose a second archetype, and combine to make your class, how augmentation is going to work, we still don't know. That's a very hard thing to predict, but also that's something that needs to be tested. The predictions right now about once Alpha 2 launches and when the game is actually going to launch, so unrealistic. Don't get me wrong, some of these videos have been fucking amazing to watch and they bring up great points, but just the archetype class system alone, with these archetypes only being going up to level 30, you have 20 more levels that need to be built for each archetype, tested, balanced, and the combination of a secondary class. It's a 62 class system. And we think the game's going to launch in 2025, 2026, or 2027. We haven't even touched on biomes, weapon skill, naval content, raid boss, dungeons. You have to make sure those are working. There is so much that needs to happen in this game. So 2025, 2026, 2027, completely out of the question. 2028, I know this was something that was talked about quite a bit. Personally, I think 2028 is a question mark. And so I'm going to leave 2028 as a 50-50. The reason why I'm leaving it as a 50-50, it depends on the hiring process for Intrepid. Back in 2022, Steven wanted 200 plus employees by the end of 2022. It's 2024 and they just got over that mark. That affects development a lot. This is definitely going to be something to watch. I don't think this is going to be something that happens very fast. So 2028 is a maybe. 2029 and 2030 honestly seem realistic. But again, this depends on whatever data, whatever feedback they're getting from the Alpha 2 test. Once they start getting this data, how that affects their development process is as well a big question mark. We don't know. So I think people making predictions, we need to just tone it down just a little bit. And I know you're excited we're getting a playable version of the game, but we have to be realistic with our expectations. This is not going to be anywhere near a complete version. So yeah, anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate it. Drop a like if you liked. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you all in the next one.